get started here, everybody. We got a shouldn't be a long meeting tonight. We got a couple of topics we're going to discuss. We've got animal control here, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about traffic. Before we get into the topics, let's see if there's any questions about anything going on in the neighborhood before we get started.
It's too hot.
We met about that earlier. We decided, you know what, tough luck. So, yes, sir.
On the 620, that right turn, when are they going to complete the right turn lane?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
On 620, the right turn lane, it's not completed yet.
Are you talking about
Deepwood?
going eastbound on 620 onto Deepwood?
Yes.
Are you talking about that part that's over here? That's not going to be open until the rest of the nightmare project that we're about to get into, which is the over the railroad tracks, the 620 interchange. It's all part of that.
So I won't see it.
Hold your breath though. It's coming fast because they've just about finished all the right-of-way acquisition. They've about bought all the property. They just closed on the Mako, you know, the body shop there. Because Wendy's is going away, Mako's going away, the gas station on the corner there is going away. All that's going away because there's going to be this massive overpass that you'll come off the freeway. You'll be up in the air until you get past Lake Creek Drive. You'll drop down to grade between Lake Creek and Deepwood. The railroad track part will have a little access road. There'll be a big traffic circle underneath that to go up Chisholm Trail or this way into the shopping. And yes, that's what's going to, when now that happens, that's when they'll finish the grade over to Deepwood. And they'll finish what they're going to be doing there. What happens with that becomes a very small project in the scheme of this big one. And they don't want to do that yet until they find out how this one is going to ultimately react. And then the engineers get in there and tweak it and fix it. So that's what's going on with that. But they've acquired pretty much all the right of way for that project. So, and they're working on utilities and engineering and stuff. And it's probably be start moving faster than you realize.
Is that diagrammed anywhere?
It's about a 2 year.
Is there a diagram anywhere of the changes that are being made?
Oh, yeah, I have it on my desk at my house.
Aside from that,
We've had it here 2 or 3 times. You can probably go to the city of Round Rock and look at it.
Okay.
But it's a massive project. It's about a 2-year project. And the other thing that's fixing to happen pretty quick here is you know all the ramp work over off McNeil and 35 and stuff. That's not far from opening up. And if you haven't figured it out yet, remember how you used to have the 620 exit and traffic would back up onto the freeway? Okay, that's not going to happen anymore because you're going to be exiting way back. Once you pass Hester's Crossing, there's going to be the exit for 620. You're going to fly up in the air and go over. Okay, and then the entrance for 620 from Hester's Crossing is moving from where it is. It'll be the other ramp going underneath. What they're doing is right now, for example, if you want to miss McNeil and get to 620, you can come off Hester's Crossing, jump up on 35, and then exit again and get to 620. You won't be able to do that anymore. Okay, the design of the highways is to keep people on the highways moving through the city and not using the freeway as a shortcut to get from one intersection to the next. And that's part of the purpose of these ramps. And if you noticed over the past couple of years from there north, traffic has moved a lot smoother with the things that they've done with the ramp reversals and so forth. And the same thing will happen back toward 45 once they finish with all this. So that's what's going to be going on there. That's going to be happening pretty quick here. They're almost done with all of that. So, and I can't think of any other major projects we got going on road-wise right now. So, any other questions about any other issues?
When are they going to come back and resurface the rest of the roads?
Good question. So I was at the chamber lunch today and I sat next to the transportation director, Gary Hutter, and normally those would be on a budget of about a couple of years to come down and do a few more of the streets. Okay? They don't come in and they don't do one neighborhood and then go to the next neighborhood and then go to the next neighborhood. Because if they did that, they'd be working on all the other neighborhoods and we'd be all pissed off until they, 10 years later, they came and got us. So they've been working through them all. There's a new type of coating of some time that they're going to experiment with on a couple of streets here in the neighborhood and a couple other neighborhoods. I don't know anything about it. All I know is Gary Askey says they're going to be approaching us to test it in the next month or so. So we'll see what's going to happen. And the way they've done this is they go through and they grade the streets. They have this page that look at a lot of things on each street. And then they put it all into a matrix, and whichever ones come to the top as being the worst, those are the ones they start paving. You know, so we may have 5 in our neighborhood that are bad, and Chisholm Valley may have 3, and you know, the woods over there may have 2, who knows? But that's how they rank which streets they're gonna repave each budget cycle. Okay? Anything else? Okay. What prompted bringing animal control here this evening was we had, I think I've expressed to you guys how much I hate Facebook, okay? I love it, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love it because it's designed for keeping in touch with family and grandkids and friends and fun and having things, but unfortunately it's been turned into a platform to where one political person tries to convince them, they argue all day long and nobody's ever going to convince anybody of anything, okay? Nobody's ever changed their mind on Facebook. It's become a public shaming platform where somebody does something wrong, they take pictures of their house and their cars and they post it up on Facebook and public shame people. And I don't go for that. So we had an incident here a while back where someone was walking a dog down the street, and this is in no way minimizing the sympathy here. There was a gentleman that lives down the street, was trying to get his dog from his truck to his house. Dog got loose, bit the lady's dog, was walking down the street and incurred some vet bills. There was a lot of hubbub about that on Facebook and Nextdoor and everything else. Now, I've lived down the street from the guy 10 years and I've never even seen his dogs. So it's not like he's careless with them. So, but while there are issues that happen, we had a couple weeks ago here in the neighborhood, and Tina's not here tonight. She had a new puppy they had adopted, and down the street from them, somebody's dog broke through the screen door and mauled it pretty good, almost killed it, but fortunately he's okay. So the topic was, okay, first thing is aggressive dogs and this type of thing, and how does animal control handle it? What are they advised to do in that type of situation? And to talk about other animals in the neighborhood. We've had the meetings about coyotes and deer and critters, and if I find a deer in the road, who do I call? Who comes and gets it? If there's a dead possum in the middle of the street, who comes and gets it? That's the kind of questions these guys can probably answer for you tonight. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to them and have them come up here and take it out.
Chair. So, my name is Joel, and I am the animal control supervisor for the city of Round Rock. This is one of my officers. His name is Jared. He's kind of my right-hand man. He's the legal expert. So if you have any questions about the laws or ordinances, guaranteed he knows the answer to it.
One can only hope.
So I'm going to basically give a brief little intro about who we are, what we do, that kind of thing. And then I kind of want to open it up to you guys to any questions you may have, because I feel as though it'll be far more informative if we do a Q&A instead of me just speaking at you about our process and procedures. So, Animal Control in Round Rock is a unit comprised of 6 people, myself and 5 officers. At the current moment, we are down a couple officers, so that leaves us with 4 people total to cover the entire city of Round Rock 24/7. That's not a lot of people. What we do for the city is a variety of tasks. We are kind of the solve all if it comes to animals. Our primary function is rabies control. If you have a dog that bites someone, we will be involved. If you see a bat and you touch it, we will be involved. Our main function is to work for the state of Texas to ensure that rabies does not spread from animals to humans. The second function that we provide is enforcement. We are the guys that take the animal control laws and ordinances and make sure that everyone's out there following them. We wrote the leash law, we write all those fun little things that you have to follow that you may or may not like. And then lastly, we do what's called public services, which are anything else that's not a bite or an exposure to rabies, that's not a law or ordinance that we have the resources to help you with. This may be things as simple as picking up dead animals. As you mentioned, if you see a deer or a possum in the roadway that's deceased, you can call us and we're happy to come get it for you. It's not something that we typically do, but it's something we have the resources to help out with, and so as community policing agents, we go out there and help out with that kind of stuff. So with that, does anyone have any specific questions about maybe a scenario they've encountered, anything they want clarification on, if you want to know our process or what we do in certain scenarios? I just kind of want to open it up to everyone.
I'm curious, what is the rule for barking? What is is it a decibel thing? Is it what is it?
The ordinance as stated in what we enforce is that a dog has to be barking for either 10 minutes straight or 30 minutes intermittently. But the important part of the ordinance is it has to cross property lines. If it's only creating a nuisance on an individual's property, it's not enforceable. So I have to be able to park out front of a neighbor's house or something here.
From the street?
Correct. So theoretically, we have situations where someone will call and complain because their house is butted up next to someone else's house, and they may hear barking, a faint bark, just coming out of a neighbor's room. If I don't hear it across the property line next door, I'm not going to enforce it, because in the ordinance it says the disturbance has to cross the property line.
How do you handle raccoons?
We don't. So, how many of you were here last year when we talked about coyotes? Yeah. So we have a policy in Round Rock, we let wildlife stay wild. They were here first, unfortunately, we encroached in their territory. So anything when it comes to live raccoons, live possums, live coyotes even, we give people deterrents, ways to keep them out of your yard if you're looking for them, and we can provide you with numbers to private companies that are able to remove them for you, to trap them and things of that nature.
They're like all our traps?
Not for wildlife. For cats, domestic animals, we do, but for wildlife, our policy is let it stay wild. It was here first.
We had an episode with raccoons last year, actually it was this year, crossing the property line and going across the property and digging out the other side. We had a trailer going across the backyard.
Yeah.
They
So-
loved us.
Yeah. Typically, what we recommend for stuff like that is try and deter it from coming on your property. I love to recommend motion-censored sprinklers, because all it takes is one time of that raccoon getting sprayed by some private water, and it will not come back on your property. Yes, ma'am.
What about a dog that gets out repeatedly?
Right, so as you all know, we have a leash law here, where in ours it's 8-200 restraint of animal. Every animal has to be on a leash if you're going to walk it or on a tether. So we also have that tethering law, which is 8-202, tethering, which has to be 10 feet of length, right? If a dog is getting out and it's not on a leash, right, that is in violation of that city ordinance 8-200. Now, if an animal is out 3 times without a leash, right, in a 1-year span, then it becomes a nuisance animal. So that law will be 8-3 nuisances under definitions 8-2. Okay?
3 times?
So I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, but that's just how we look at it, right?
3 times within what?
So it's 3 times within a 12-month span, it becomes a nuisance animal. And then also, if it's just out without a leash and it's just roaming the streets, it's under that restraint of animal.
I told you you can do this stuff.
Sorry, kind of just threw it
So
out
if
there.
the-
Like, ah!
So if the dog is running around loose, I mean,
Correct.
what
So-
do we do?
Yeah, so if you guys do ever see an animal just running around without an owner near, please give us a call, right? We don't know what that animal's state of mind is. We don't know if he is an angry animal. We don't know if he's happy. We don't want you to get bit, because if you get bit, it's a whole nother issue. So please give us a call immediately, and we'll come out as soon as we can to try to locate that animal. We'll be able to scan for a microchip to hopefully get that dog back to its owner.
How often does,
What's your number?
I mean, if you pick up a dog, you take it to Williamson County and they scan it?
No. So what's going to happen, anytime I come out for a dog that's at large, right, I'm going to try to get the dog first. Hopefully I do. Once I do have him, I have a microchip scanner in my truck where I instantly go and I will try to scan that dog for a microchip. If he comes back with a hit on that microchip, and I do have his information, which is just a number, right? It's just like 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? I then take that number and I have a card that I can pair it up with, such as a 24-hour pet watch company who has implanted that chip in the dog. I'll give them a call and get the owner's information if they registered that animal. As soon as I have that information, I am getting your dog back to you as fast as I can, because I don't want the dog, and I can tell you the Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter doesn't want to keep your dog either. We are trying to get it back to you as the owner. However, if I cannot find any of that information, and I can't find a neighbor who knows you or knows this dog, we will be transporting them to the Williamson County shelter, where they will be cared for, and a lot of the times, if they are not chipped, they are put on a 3-day stray hold there before they are put up for adoption, okay? So that's how that all works.
phone number.
Yeah, so that number to call any animal control is 512-218-5500.
And we'll get that to you guys again after the meeting in case you don't have anything to write down.
Right.
Explain what happens when you dial that number. You get the police department.
Right, so
And then they're
that
gonna tell you what.
gets you to the front desk of the police department where you'll be prompted with some numbers and one of them will say animal control. So that's the non-emergency number. In rare circumstances where you're, like, let's say getting attacked by a dog, that constitutes an emergency. So we recommend you always call 911. Just only do that for emergencies.
Were you involved in the episode described by Mike just now, about the dog who mauled the other one? And if yes, what action did you take?
So that was never reported to us. And I think it's important to note that I was actually just informed of this by Mike beforehand, that you guys have one of the most active neighborhoods. That's news to me, because by and large, the neighborhood does not report stuff to the police department, which is both good and bad, because I can appreciate a neighborhood that likes to police itself, that likes to self-contain. But if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. So this comes back to, the running 3 times in a 12-month span. If you don't report it, that doesn't count as a time. We have to know about it. So I recommend anytime you see a dog running at large, you see a dog attack, anything like that, please report it to us so we can handle it.
Now, y'all knew about the one that just happened last week, right?
Is that the one he was describing?
Yeah, I talked about 2 different ones.
The one, because the dog that attacked was surrendered.
One that came through the screen door.
The
I do think one of my officers handled that.
Yeah.
It was neither of us. So
Okay,
I can't
okay.
give you the details,
I
but
knew that-
It does sound vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were out for that. The other one, God knows what happened to that one.
Are y'all just available like 8 to 5 weekdays, or is there a separate something to call on a weekend? Because it was like a Sunday that there's a dog running around.
Right, so you still call that non-emergency number, and it will get you to the dispatch department, who will page out an officer if it's necessary. You'll either get a police officer if it's an emergency, or they'll call for an ACO if it's not an emergency, but it still constitutes something we need to handle.
And what's your comment on coyotes around here?
So last year we had a problem with coyotes in the area getting people's wild or domestic animals, cats, fish, birds, things like that. We did call in the USDA to try and trap some of the coyotes, but the issue we run into is when we remove coyotes from the ecosystem, they go into a process called, I want to say it's estuary or something, where they all start reproducing. So instead of having coyotes where you only have one mating alpha pair, if you remove that alpha female, you send all the females into the pack in heat, and then you end up with an explosion of coyotes. So we tried to solve the problem as best we could as a department, but by and large, the same stuff we recommend, automatic sprinklers, any kind of sound emitting device, stuff to keep them off your property is by and large more effective than trying to remove them completely.
There's the dogs, they'll run along.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this question has been asked, I just came in.
Sure.
Does your department have anything to do with injured or dead deer? Who to call, what to do about it? It seems like a long time ago, there was a dead deer in the middle of Deepwood, and I was told by someone that we needed to call the Texas Department of Wildlife for them to have to actually move it. Do you know?
So it depends on the state of the deer, and this kind of applies to all wildlife. If it's injured to the point where it's suffering, we can come out and get it to humanely euthanize it, because we would rather it be euthanized than suffer until it eventually dies anyways. If it's a minor injury, something that it does not need to be euthanized for, then we recommend you call a wildlife rehabber, like Austin Wildlife Center or All Things Wild, and they're usually able to take the animals off your hand and nurse them back to health. We don't have the ability to do that. All we can do is make sure that they're not suffering.
And if it's in the street and dead, do we call you?
Correct. We will pick up any dead animal out of any public right of way, which means we don't typically go into people's backyards. We're not going to go under your sheds. But if it's in the roadway or it's on a sidewalk, we're happy to come up and get it for you.
So if somebody finds a dead raccoon, possum, whatever on their property, what should they do?
If it's on your property, you just throw it in the trash. You put it in a black trash bag, and Round Rock Refuge will haul it away.
Does that count for bats as well? You know, things
Don't
that you
touch bats.
suspect might have rabies?
Right, so if it's a bat, and you know no one's touched it, you live alone, you have no kids, no pets, nothing, and you can dispose of it without touching it, either by using maybe tongs or even just scooping it up with something, you're more than welcome to throw it away. If you suspect an exposure, like it flew out of your chimney and it landed on your arm and you knocked it away, call us so we can pick it up and test it for rabies.
Okay, any more questions about all that stuff? There we go.
This is kind of crazy, but if your dog dies, are you allowed to bury it in your backyard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I hope so, my cat's very
Somebody, had land with a farm and did that, and a friend mentioned that at a party that, hey, you're not supposed to do that here, because it gets into the water, and this long explanation, so.
Right, there's no city ordinance against it, so you're more than welcome to do it. Now, if you bury it only a couple inches deep or something and it ends up decomposing and causing a nuisance, we may take action, but just in general, burying it's not a problem. Yes, sir.
Are there any rules for repeat offender, like my dog goes into somebody's yard or hurts somebody and it happens every 3 months? Are there any rules for that?
Right, yeah, so that does fall under that nuisance law, okay? So 8-3 nuisances, if your dog continues to get out and it is even farther along than 3 times, what happens then is the city can deem your dog a nuisance animal, and then we can go through a process with the courts to have your animal removed from the city, right? Because now it's constituting a nuisance, we're getting calls, every other day about your dog getting out, getting into somebody's yard, and we've talked to you about it, we've given you citations over it, but we just can't seem to come up with a good solution for the animal. At that point, it becomes on a citizen who is complaining. They can call and say, hey, I want this dog declared a nuisance, and then it will go to us, who then we can push it forward within the courts to have your dog removed from the city.
How long this process takes?
For a nuisance animal, we have never had to remove a dog or animal for that matter for nuisances.
Usually by the third ticket, people start to get it.
Yeah. Once you have enough of those, you don't want them anymore. But we haven't ever had to kick a dog out because of it being a nuisance. So I would assume that it would take the same amount of time as deeming a dog dangerous. It would take around a month or so.
Yeah, probably 6 to 8 weeks would be the time frame for that. I would like to point out, if you go onto our city ordinance website, the nuisance law has about 12 different things that we can declare an animal a nuisance for. So it's not just running at large 3 times. It can be declared a nuisance if it defecates in your property, like your neighbor's dog comes over and defecates. It can be because it's chasing cars. Like we have an entire list of nuisances that we can pull from to get there. As well as if for whatever reason we investigate a nuisance and determine that the dog is not a nuisance, you can also file that charge on your own. We have what's called a citizen's complaint packet. You come down to the police station and pick it up, you fill it out and submit it to the courts, and you can have a judge rule on whether or not it's a nuisance without us ever getting involved. So if you feel as though we investigated incorrectly, you're more than welcome to come pick up a citizen's complaint packet and work around us to get to your ultimate goal.
Skunks.
What about them?
I see them on occasion, and my impression is that they're one of the animals that really carries rabies along. I don't know if it's really higher incidence or not for skunks.
So skunks are higher risk than other animals. That's because the state of Texas has a program called the Oral Rabies Program, where they're dropping animal bait from airplanes with the rabies vaccine. And what they found is coyotes and raccoons, the other 2 high-risk species, are very receptive to that. They eat the bait, and it's controlled the rabies in their communities. Skunks, for whatever reason, won't take the bait. So they have, by and large, become the biggest problem for rabies other than bats in the area. That said, we get a lot of calls about skunks being out in the daytime or stuff like that. People say they're rabid. Chances are good that's not true. That's kind of a misnomer that they're nocturnal. They can be active 24/7. So once again, if there's been an exposure, if you have a pet that's bitten it, anything like that, we'll come get it and get it tested and be safe. But if it's just out and about, try and deter it with water, with sound, with whatever you got to do to scare it off, that's going to be your best bet for getting rid of them.
Do we have any part of Round Rock that's affected by
wild pigs?
So we have had some reports of a couple neighborhoods, mainly off of Red Button Old Settlers, or Red Button Palm Valley, out that way, because there's some county roads and some people own pigs and they've got loose and they've been reproducing and things of that nature. And then I've also seen some wild pigs up near the outlet mall on the north side of the city, which those are a little bit harder to pinpoint, but those are the two communities of wild pigs I've seen.
They don't come over to this side of the freeway because pigs like to dig and there's nothing but rock over here. All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate that. I was going to ask what do you do to find a dead skunk in the middle of the road, but only people over 55 would get that. Thank you guys, appreciate it.
So like we said, we're going to hang around for a little bit. If you want to come up after the meeting and talk to us, because you have another question you want to ask.
This next part's going to take like 10 minutes is all it's going to take, so we're,
Yeah.
And hang around, I appreciate it.
Yep, and we'll give out whatever phone numbers you need, and hopefully we'll get you guys everything you need. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay. Speeding. Speeding has been the #1 issue for the 25 years I've been in this neighborhood, and guess what it still is? Speeding. How do we solve the problem? People say, well, lower the speed limit, more policemen. You know, the debate goes on and on and on and on. So here's the facts right now as we know them. There's always going to be speeders. The other facts are most people aren't speeding, contrary to what people believe. Because I live on Oak Ridge and people say everybody speeds down Oak Ridge. I promise you, I can sit there in my front yard and about 1 out of every 30 cars might be speeding, okay? And I've done that just to see. So the challenge then runs, they say, okay, why can't we lower the speed limit and give a police a bigger threshold to give a ticket to? So to do that, the city has to come out and do a study. Lay their things out and do their little study. The risk there is, by state law, if they come out and they do this test, and everybody's driving down Deepwater Oak Ridge, and the average speed is 35 miles an hour, guess what they have to do? They have to raise the speed limit, okay? I have tried, and I have been chastised and threatened to be burned at the stake by neighbors by defending this speeding issue, because most of the people that speed through this neighborhood live in the neighborhood, okay? And I know, because I've followed them many, many times, just to see where they go, okay? I posted the other day, my favorite thing to do is during rush hour is to drive up and down Deepwood and Oak Ridge at 20 miles an hour. I love to do that during rush hour. Watch a line of cars line up behind me, you know? Today, or yesterday, no, it was today, I think it was this morning, there was a kid, you know, around our neighborhood, we see the Austin Driving School cars all the time. Somebody was driving down St. Williams and somebody went screaming around him during the early school time, you know, in a residential street past them. So, there is a new device called a Sierzega. It's S-I-E-R-Z-E-G-A. I think it's German technology that the city, one of the city departments now has, that they can come out and set this up and do an unofficial speed study. It's a very accurate speed study. It's a little box about this big that they attach to a pole. And it'll measure vehicles going away, coming toward it, going away from it. It can tell you if it's a motorcycle, a truck, or a car, what the average speed is. It provides all kinds of data. Tomorrow, they're going to be setting one up on Oak Ridge, around where the speed humps were. Because when they repaved, everybody said, put the speed humps back. Since you took the speed humps back, everybody's speeding. No, actually it's slowed down, because what happened before was people would slow down to the speed hump, they would use that as start and finish line for the drag strip. They go over the speed hump, floor it to get to the next one, and then go over it. And I know, because I live right in the middle of it. Okay? The nice thing about this one is, this study is not considered an official study. So we can do some studying and find out, provide information, the city can look at and see what really is happening with the cars in the neighborhood. How many cars are driving through the neighborhood during a week? How fast they're going, what the average speed is, what the low speed, high, medium, all that mathematical stuff they can do. Unfortunately, we only have access to this like once every 2 or 3 months, because there's other neighborhoods that are running this thing through in the neighborhood. We are considering throwing it out to the neighborhood to purchase one of these Sears Ziggles. They're about $2,700. We have it in our budget to do that. And if we own our own, then we can go to each street that, when somebody's talking about it, we can start putting together data to provide to the city, or data to provide to ourselves, so that we'll shut up about the speeding and go on to the next biggest problem, which would be dead skunks in the middle of the road, It's a joke. It was a song, guys. It was a song back in the 60s. Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Come on. Anyway, so that's the thing on the speeding. We're not going to call for a vote yet on it, but unfortunately, the way our neighborhood works is when we have a meeting like this, if we take a vote and a majority votes to do it, then we can do it, even though the other 3,000 people that live in the neighborhood aren't here at our meeting. And so that's the way it's going to happen. So probably the next meeting, it's very possible that I'm going to come with an ask for a vote on whether we buy one or not. We're going to see how this testing does on Oak Ridge, and then maybe another street or two, and see where it goes. But I promise you the data is going to show that the majority of people, we can argue, is 30 miles an hour too fast for our neighborhood? Yes, there's no question. But it is what it is. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's been that way for 40 years. It's not going to change. But the argument can be that most people aren't speeding. And all we can do is, if we see our neighbors speeding, try to educate them and be nice and say, hey, can you slow down a little? Or hey, your kid was acting like a jerk going down the road the other day or something. That's how we're trying to address this issue. I got in trouble for this statement too, so if I do again, what the hell. I would rather have my police officers out fighting crime, okay? Preventing burglaries, arresting bad guys, than have 8 officers parked in the neighborhood running speed traps, okay? That's more important to me, that somebody doesn't break in my house or vandalize my car or rob the bank or something. That's more important to me. So that's where I'm at on that, okay? So we're going to try to be doing some research here on the speeding issue, see how we can address it. But again, I've been in this neighborhood long enough to tell you, and I've lived on Bluff, I've lived on Deepwood, and I've lived on Oak Ridge for several years on all 3 of them. And I promise you that I have a good handle on what's going on in the neighborhood speeding wise. And yes, we have our issues with speeding. The blessing is, when they opened La Frontera, traffic in our neighborhood went up about 30%. Because everybody from over there, Stone Canyon, Great Oaks and all, to get to La Frontera, the only way they had to do was either go 35 or come through our neighborhood. Traffic was way up. Any of you that live on any of Deepwood, Oak Ridge, St. Williams realize that. It was up for a long time. Then they opened the toll roads, traffic went down somewhat. Then what was the next thing that happened? O'Connor. The O'Connor extension opened up and traffic went through our neighborhood. And I know that for a fact because I'm one of those that doesn't cut through the neighborhood anymore, because I live on Oak Ridge, and to get to HEB, I go to McNeil, down to O'Connor, and up to HEB and back. So that helped a lot. So we're back down to what would be considered a normal flow. Most of the traffic going through the neighborhood is not cut through traffic. Yes, there's some, but the majority of it is not. Unfortunately, when the cut through traffic we have when school is out, we have kids coming through to go to Round Rock High School. And middle school too, some middle school. Yes, ma'am.
Well, about the Sears Zigga and
Yes.
it's the study you're going to do with it, won't collecting that information and giving that to the city maybe have the same
okay,
effect?
so here's where this comes into play, and where there might be a tool for us. It'll do one of 2 things. If we're going to look at this study. It's an unofficial study, remember, with the department that's doing it. Many of you, have y'all met Joe Bream? Some of y'all met Joe Bream with the city. He's our neighborhood services coordinator. He's arranged for his department to get a budget to buy one of these for this exact purpose. And his assistant Katie is going to be meeting me out here tomorrow with a police officer to find out where to put it. And yes, it's on my street, it's on Oak Ridge. I did it first. So, and it's not the whole neighborhood. And we will see what the data says on that. And if it looks like it's actual data or stuff that we might want to pursue further, what it can be is, if we do get one, we can start doing research on multiple streets, put that data together and go to the city and say, here, you need to do a real study here. Okay? Because if this data shows that, okay, the average speed is really 22 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour, then maybe we have a chance of getting the speed limit lowered. And all I can tell you is that when the city does ever come out and run one of those studies, we're gonna get everybody in the neighborhood to drive up and down those streets about 20 times a day at 20 miles an hour. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of the intent of where we're going with it. The data may or may not be useful, we don't know yet. We're gonna check and see how this one does. It may be a tool, it's gonna do one or two things. It's gonna give us ammunition to go to the city and say you need to do something with the speed limit, or it's gonna prove to us that most people aren't speeding. My suspicion is it's gonna be the second. It's gonna prove to us that most people aren't speeding. Yes?
You know what I'm gonna say?
I know what you're gonna say. I know where you live. You live on the corner of your road, truck, car's been driven through and.
Yeah, drunk through the fence, but that was a different story.
You bought it on a curb, I can't help it.
But, we're on the corner of Oak Ridge and Ridge Rock, and there's a curb there. And it's like, come sit in my yard, because I personally feel that the speed limit has increased and the traffic has increased because the people that were cutting down Deepwood to avoid the speed humps, now going down Deepwood, you've got 3 stop signs in that dip. So guess which way they're coming?
Have you ever driven that even now without the speed humps? It still takes longer to get down Oak Ridge than it does Deepwood.
And we had talked when the police officer was here, and now that school's back up, when the kids are leaving the high school to go to lunch, it is really bad coming through the neighborhood going, so that would be, if you're talking to them, to ask them again about, maybe, and I have seen them, they've been out since school started. I've seen
enforcement during those periods of the day.
But and my other question is, and it's funny because at one time when I did talk to the police and they put a box up to check that data, where they're gonna put it, because they put it right on a pole at the bridge before the stop sign.
Well, okay, so they had one over here on Oak Ridge that they did 3 weeks ago, but they put it in between the S curve south of me. Which is where 2 places are slowing down. I said, that data is not valid. I made them take it down. I said, we're gonna do this again.
And I said, and someone came back when I put it, when a car goes around that corner on a tilt, they're going more than, and there's tire squeals, and I feel really bad because there's a couple of buses that I'm gonna call on at Chisholm. Because when those buses, and I know they want to get rid of those kids, but they are, I would say, come sit in my yard some afternoon and I honestly believe that it's more than the 30 miles an hour.
Is it possible to put a stop sign up there?
They're not gonna put stop signs up.
There's no.
Traffic has to warrant stop signs.
Yeah,
I'll
but
give you an example in a minute.
I hear you can put one up and the city realizes, then they'll come take it back down like they did in La Frontera.
I'll tell you what happened.
What did happen?
So, I respect what you're saying, Cheryl, and you are correct, but I'm gonna tell you, perception is weird, because I went out one day with my assistant, and I put her in my truck, and I said, I want you to drive around that corner, your corner, at 25 miles an hour, and then do it at 30. And I promise you, going around that corner at 25 miles an hour looks really fast, and it tilts the truck, okay? And I'm watching, and I'm saying, I had her drive up and down different streets at different speeds. And then I had her take, when I had a smaller car, I had her drive that at the same speed. The perception was that the smaller car was going slower. So there's a lot of perception with the speed limit thing that bigger vehicles.
Perception ain't that bad,
So that's why I'm having the speed study done, so that we can see what's happening, okay?
Yeah.
I know there's no question that people speed, okay? And there's no question that we have more traffic than we did 20 years ago. And that's inevitable. But we have a lot less than we did before O'Connor opened up. And most of the traffic cutting through can't do anything about the school stuff. We can maybe talk the police into enforcing during that lunch hour some more. That's the kind of data that we're looking for to help study, because this thing will tell us the time of day. It'll tell us this many cars went through this time of day at this average speed. So we're going to see what happens on this Oak Ridge study, and we'll go from there.
So what happened at La Frontera?
Okay,
What's the
so you
speed
guys
limit?
notice the stop sign at La Frontera at Corey and Hester's Crossing, the new stop sign?
Yeah.
That's not there anymore?
Right.
Can I
I stopped at it twice.
I did
No
too,
stop sign.
I did too. I'm sure they thought I was crazy.
So what happened was, they're building that new building right next to me.
Right.
One of the contractors, somewhere in their bid, whatever, understood that they were allowed to put 2 stop signs there. The city found out about it, they came out and rather than just rip them down, they did a study on the traffic at that intersection there. And there's not enough traffic there to warrant a stop sign. Okay, there's not enough traffic coming out of 480 onto the crossing. Now, the good news is, they're studying La Frontera Boulevard up the top of the hill. It's a 4-way stop right now. They're looking at studying that for a traffic light.
Yes.
And they're likely gonna put a traffic light in there, which means if they do put a traffic light in there, and you're trying to come in on Corey down here, you're gonna at least get brakes when the light's red. You're gonna get a chance to get out, so.
Are they doing anything with the county road in Parker where they're by the rehab center? Whether it's just a stop sign on the county road?
Oh, you're talking about where Hester Crossing runs into Quick Hill?
Yeah,
Right now, probably not.
okay. See, I would think they would.
The problem, I gotta see where the city limit goes with that, because I know along Quick Hill Road on the easternmost boundary is city limits boundary, county versus city, but the county kind of, there's little jigsaw puzzle pieces that dip back in there that are the county, so we'd have to look into that and see, but I believe there should be a light there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
So why did they put a stop sign, they did this years ago, on Creekview right there at Wildwood? Is that, there's you go 3 houses and there's another stop sign.
Okay. That was a pretty bad stretch of people speeding along there, and
So they put a stop sign for the speeders?
I can only speculate, and I can't mention any names, but there's somebody that used to live in the neighborhood who had high connections that was able to get that stop sign put in.
That's
Okay?
the dumbest stop sign.
That's all I can say. I can't go any further than that without any names, some good people and some friends.
We thought you had high connections.
Exactly.
We thought you had high
I
connections.
understand, but if I do this over here for her, then I can shoot off. If I do this over here, I can shoot off. You know, it's a no-win situation. Yes, sir.
So what's going to be the duration of the study with this black box?
1 week. They run it 7 days, that's about how long the battery lasts, it's battery powered. They run it 7 days, take that data, that way you get a full, they did about 8 years ago, we were talking about maybe having a stop sign put where Creekview runs into Deepwood, by the elementary school there.
Right.
And they did one study, and I got to looking at it, I was looking at the time of day that they were using the study from. Well, the time of day was 2:30, 2 to 3 in the afternoon. Well, what happens during the school year, 2 to 3 on Deepwood? A school zone. They said, there's nothing wrong, everybody's going 20 miles an hour. I said, yeah, it's a school zone. So we never went back and revisited that, but that's, timing has everything to do with it. Like she said, they had it on, if you're coming north on Oak Ridge and then you hit that first curve and then that next curve.
Right.
They had it in between those two, which are the 2 places people are going to slow down.
So we can have it.
So now it's going to be on the straightaway.
So we could potentially have the use of that every 3 months-ish.
Well, so the trick is going to be there's several places in the neighborhood that are prone to this where you have these long stretches. Creekview,
Right.
Deepwood. Love, surprisingly enough, doesn't have that much traffic. Okay, it was the first street in the neighborhood. It had model homes in it, widest street out here. You know, and surprisingly, I lived on it for 2 years. It's not a problem.
That's not true.
Oh, you got church traffic to deal with.
Not only church traffic, but because that's where people are exiting the residential area or entering in the evening. And as soon as they...
I mean cut-through traffic. I mean, it's not used as cut-through, it's used as people in the neighborhood trying to get out of
Yeah, but they are sometimes unbearable. Because
You're talking about speeding wise?
Yeah, and they're running late or they are in hurry to get home.
There's no question that there are certain areas. Love, Creekview, St. Williams, Oak Ridge, and Deepwood are probably the primary ones. Of course, now everybody who lives on Wildwood is going to holler at me and say, everybody cuts through Wildwood. Yeah, they do. But they live in the neighborhood. But they live in the neighborhood. But I'm saying they live in the neighborhood.
Right.
So these offenders that we're talking about live here.
Yeah.
You know, most of them live here. So, you know, we educate our neighbors.
Second question, which has nothing to do with speeding. What's the rule of people parking in front of your mailbox during the time when the mail is supposed to be coming? Because I had the experience and I requested the gentleman, sir, would you please park a little further? And his answer was, young man, you do not own the road.
He's right. You can't dictate who parks in front of your house, okay? That is not your property. That is city property. Anybody can park in front of your house if you want. The mailbox, I don't know about that. I
So I
haven't researched
can,
that
I
to see
can
what.
put 20 nails on the road and right in front of his car. That's not his rules.
Oops, oops.
Yeah, I mean,
Oops.
can we do that?
No, the answer is you can't dictate who parks on the street in front of your house. Now, when it comes to blocking your mailbox, there may be something there. I'd have to research that, and I'll see what I can find out for you on that. I know it also depends on your mail, the mail person you have delivered. We have a
These
great
people
list.
are doing good work because it's like for lunch for elderly or something. So they are doing good work. I'm nothing against them. Just, you know, because mailman will not get off his truck
Right.
and he'll just pass it.
Yeah, my mail lady will. She's great. Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate an increase in traffic for the 2 years that they're working on 620?
I'm not even gonna touch that question with a 10-foot pole, okay? I have no clue what they're gonna do with that. That would be a crapshoot to try to guess on that one, what's gonna happen, because that is good. I mean, y'all remember when they did Hester's Crossing up here? We thought it was gonna be a nightmare. They actually did a pretty good job at managing traffic during that whole construction. And our big argument was, remember with the McNeil off-ramp closing and stuff, and how's the traffic gonna get through? They said it's gonna be a nice big wide intersection. Well, look at it now, it's what, 8 lanes or 7 lanes on both sides to get through? A lot of cars move through there. So, you know, what are they gonna do on up here? I have no idea.
You have an update on the train?
What's that?
The silent crossing of the train?
No, November, I think, no, August, the end of August, they're supposed to be started.
This one? This is August?
Yeah, we're waiting any day now for them to start.
Great.
Phase 1, which is right from here to Burnett Road. Not Burnett, Austin Burnett, but Round Rock Burnett. We're the first phase of the silent crossings, and it's all signed, sealed, delivered, funded. Just waiting for the Union Pacific crews to get down here to do it. They're supposed to be here any time now.
That was just 5 years to get that done? Was it
Actually, it took us about 7 years. We started 7 years ago when we got the first 500,000 from Congressman Carter. Got that for us about 7 years ago. So, we've been working on that one for a long time. Okay, yes, sir.
Do you know if as part of that, if they're gonna redo the interaction of the roadway with the railroad, because you go over and that.
Okay, how long have you lived here?
I've lived here almost 2 years, less than 2 years.
Okay, so you weren't here 3 years ago when it was about 3 times worse than it is now.
Okay.
Right now, it's amazing, okay? Don't complain.
Sure enough.
No, what I have noticed is if it's nice and flat, and it obviously does something with the railroad tracks, it does some settling, so you still have a little bump over that. But before that, everybody remember that? Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
I knew he was new, so. Yes, ma'am.
Well, this is moving ahead a year, but on Deepwood, I've heard that Deepwood is going to be extended all the way to 79 in
Okay, so where'd you hear
2019. It was on the master plan.
Okay, you're looking at a master plan that's been around for 30 years. That is not in the plan. Okay, that is not in the plan. And that is one thing we have fought vehemently for, because I don't know if you remember, there used to be Deepwood was gonna come down by the recycling center, Arterial C was gonna cut off and circle around, come over here, intersect with 45. Well, because of all the bugs and beetles and salamanders and everything over there, they had to reconfigure all that. But the whole deal was, we are not gonna let them cut Deepwood through to San Bass. Frankly, if they did it right now, I don't think it would make any difference because the Creekview extension makes so much more sense. Since that is open, I use that a lot, even to just get over to 79 and 35 without having to deal with 35. So I don't, yes, it's still sitting there like number 89 on the top 10 things they're worried about on a master plan. So it's not alive anywhere.
Okay, good.
So, yeah. We're watching that one close. What's that?
Why is that the railroad track? Is that not scheduled?
Are you talking about the 621? Yeah, well, they just acquired, my understanding was they just acquired Mako, Wendy's, and the gas station on the corner. Because those are going away, so they've acquired all the easements, I believe. And it's just a matter of the utility work and the engineering and stuff. So within, I'm going to say within 2 years, you're going to see significant work going on that.
Are they going to put sidewalks on 620 for the high school students to go east? And,
Okay, so remember what I said, you're gonna come off the freeway, it's gonna be above grade, all the way down to between Lake Creek and Deepwood, drop down to grade. The rest of that's gonna have access roads like a freeway, okay? To get to Lake Creek and Subway, further down the road and down, up and down Chisholm Trail. So yeah, it's gonna have a big traffic circle over the railroad tracks.
but sidewalks, so for pedestrians to get in and out of our neighborhood safely when our cars aren't working, when we want to ride our bikes, when students want to go from high school east, there's no sidewalk.
From where to where?
From high school to go east, from Round Rock High School.
Oh,
There's
across the
no
street, you
sidewalk.
mean?
Yeah, if they're coming from the.
Oh, they're gonna still have crossings with lights there.
No,
They're
but in
gonna have a
the,
sidewalk along 620.
There's just a trail, a dirt trail
There's a dirt
in the
trail and
ditch.
it drops off. There's just a grassy drop off. I've seen kids skateboarding.
Where on 620 is that?
If you go Lake Creek and try to turn east on 620, there is no
Oh,
sidewalk.
you're talking about going over toward the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
and even going from,
Yeah.
even going from Lake Creek to Deepwood, there's
Yeah.
Why would
pedestrians
you go, why
all
would you go
over.
down, there's nothing to eat over there until you get to 35.
There's
sprouts,
riding
their
sprouts,
bicycles.
there's
Okay,
riding
right, so let me
bikes.
back the truck up then there.
Yeah.
It's not complete yet, it's in the process of being built, it's already been funded by the bonds and so forth, there's our parks and trails. Is if you go where Round Rock West Park is over here, you go across the street to where the offices are, you go right down to the creek,
Right,
along there, all the way down to 35,
right.
there, you can get up to there, and there'll be a sidewalk up to where you can get over to the corner of 620 and all that area, or you're gonna be able to get right on over into Centennial Park, either on bike or walking and the whole
Oh,
works.
yeah, and that's gonna be wonderful. But for our students who go to Round Rock High School, they are walking from school east to go to the parking lot of Sprouts. If you want to sit and watch.
You know, I don't know how much time you get for lunch in school, but I never
This
had
is
enough time to
before.
walk that far to eat lunch and then come back to school.
Sir, this
They
is
don't care if they
before
go
and
back.
after
Huh?
school. This
Yeah,
is
they want-
before and
Oh, you're not after
after
school,
school.
okay.
This is
Well,
students.
I don't know,
Our students should have
I'm
safe-
arguing from ignorance here because.
Well, and additionally, we had a senior citizen killed trying to cross 620 from
The neighborhood.
that neighborhood just,
That's
what's
where
the
I
street,
live.
Brentwood?
Well, here's what I would suggest.
Yes, sir.
I would suggest either going to the website and investigating the master plan for this deal, or waiting, because I'm certain that that's, because anytime they've done new construction with roads here, they paid attention to bike and sidewalks and stuff, so I'm gonna get, because all that's gonna be just gutted. The whole thing's gonna be gutted and redone, so I'm certain that something's gonna happen along there with that.
Well, I hope so. I just mentioned it to you because I know that you really are tight with, and you understand
I'll go
what's
look at
coming
my
up.
plans and
I
see what I
appreciate
can
that.
see, and then talk to them, see if I can find something out, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, Texas is like 14th lowest in pedestrian deaths. And so that's why I would really like to see our city take a firm going forward.
If you notice anything the city has done with new construction, they have taken that into consideration and done that. Put in sidewalks, walkways,
Yeah.
made things safe. So anytime they're going through and rehabilitating an area, they're doing that, so it's not like they're ignoring it.
Rehabilitation is a good thing and
I'll bet you that, I'm certain that that's
revitalization.
in the master plan.
Well, I will definitely look at that. Thank you
Please
for
do,
that
and
suggestion.
I'll check it too, so.
Appreciate that. Thank
I
you.
thought they had a city ordinance that if you develop a piece of property, then you were required to put a sidewalk.
It depends on, they mentioned the code of ordinances a while ago. If you ever have trouble sleeping, go to the website, start reading the code of ordinances. No problem falling asleep. It's like on and on and on.
Because almost everything is locked and carried out that site.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say is, anytime something's being developed in the city, is done, put good codes in place for. I can't answer saying, does every development have to do sidewalks? I can't answer that. What I can tell you is everything I've seen them do now has sidewalks. All the office condos along 620 over here,
Yeah, right.
look how nice that is. So they're doing a good job of making sure that stuff happens.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, cut you loose. Our animal control guys are here. You can go beat them up if you want. Just don't beat me up.